Hello and welcome to another episode of Now Showing, where I give you thoughts on the films I've seen this week. Thank you so much for joining us. The first film up is a big theatrical release and the end of an era, we hope. And that is Halloween Ends. This is the 13th film to carry the name Halloween since 1978. The journey of Michael Myers and Laurie Strode began in that 1978 original film from John Carpenter, and now Halloween Ends, debuted Friday, is the third and final film in a sequel trilogy from writer-director David Gordon Green. It began with 2018 with Halloween, which picked up the journey 40 years later and debuted to effusive praise. I also enjoyed that film. The follow-up, Halloween Kills, which dropped last year, was not as well received. That left a lot of questions about how this trilogy and presumably Laurie Strode's story would end. We got that answer on Friday, and all I can say is it doesn't end well. Halloween Ends is a different vibe and tone from Green's previous installments, but that's not really a good thing. The film is something of a mess. It meanders, tries to introduce a few new subplots and characters. None of it really worked for me, building toward a climax that is only marginally satisfying. The only good thing I can say is that it definitely feels like an ending. But if you want a good Halloween story, I'd say try the original or even Green's first film. You can go ahead and most likely skip this mess. Halloween Ends is now streaming on Peacock and playing in theaters. I only gave it 1 star out of 5. The next film up on the hit list is another theatrical release, and that's Lyle Lyle Crocodile. This film tells the story of Lyle, the singing crocodile, and the family he finds in a New York City brownstone. Lyle is voiced by singer Shawn Mendes, and he's discovered in an exotic animal factory by a song and dance man named Hector P. Valenti, who's played by Javier Bardem. He sees Lyle as a potential partner in a new production and leverages all he owns to get a show that would do just that. Unfortunately, Lyle gets a case of stage fright, which keeps him from singing and lands Hector in debt. Hector hits the road, leaving Lyle in the brownstone. A mere 18 months later, a new family moves in, and Lyle makes a connection with Josh, played by Winslow Fegley, and his parents, played by Constance Wu and Scoot McNairy. Finding the family he's always wanted that way. Can he overcome his stage fright, though, to show that he's meant to live a different life? This is a family-friendly option, which is always nice to have. I went and saw this film with my wife, my sister, and my nephew, and I think we had a blast. There's comedy and big musical numbers. Mendes does a wonderful job performing the voice work for Lyle, and Constance Wu and Javier Bardem do well in their musical numbers as well. It's not a complicated film, but it's heartwarming, and I had a lot of fun with it. The film is something of a blast. As I mentioned, Lyle Lyle Crocodile is now playing in theaters. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next up on the hit list is Rosaline, which is a new film streaming on Hulu. We're all familiar with the story of Romeo and Juliet. It's old as time, but I doubt you've ever seen it told like this. We open with Rosaline, played by Caitlin Dever, a Capulet whose father, played by Bradley Whitford, is trying to marry her off. But she has a secret romance going with a Montague named Romeo. That's right, that Romeo, played by Kyle Allen. They plan to go public with their relationship during the Capulet ball, but unfortunately, Rosaline is sent on an arranged date with Dario, played by Sean Teal, missing the ball. In her stead, Romeo meets and instantly falls in love with Rosaline's cousin, Juliet, played by Isabella Merced. That throws a jilted Rosaline into the middle of an epic love story, but she might also find herself in the middle of a love story of her own. We're all familiar with the story of Romeo and Juliet, but as I said, you've never seen it told like this. Dever is a lot of fun in the lead role, and I really enjoyed Whitford and Minnie Driver, who plays Rosaline's primary confidant and nurse. They have plenty of fun in their roles and a lot of award-winning lines. Allen and Merced are solid in their roles as the Romeo and Juliet, and Dever's connection and chemistry with Teal makes the film hum. There's a lot to like here, especially in a wild and creative third act. The film takes a well-known story and finds a way to make it unique and engaging. It was memorable, and I had a lot of fun with this film. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. And as I said, Rosaline is now streaming on Hulu. Next up, we have the film Triangle of Sadness. This one debuted at the Cannes Film Festival and won the prestigious Palme d'Or. It's a different kind of a film from writer-director Ruben Östlund. We're first introduced to Carl and Yaya, who are a couple of models. They argue over money and gender roles, but they seem to be trying to make the relationship work. Pretty soon, we're whisked aboard a yacht. Yaya is an influencer, we find out, and they've gotten free passage on this cruise voyage. There, they mingle with a number of older, well to do folks, learning many of them take full advantage of their life of privilege and the different ways that they built their fortunes. The film takes a real turn during a disastrous captain's dinner, the captain of the ship, played by Woody Harrelson. Soon the ship is attacked by pirates, and a band of guests, including Carl and Yaya, have to find a way to survive. This is a comedy, though it's not aiming for that sort of laugh out loud jokes, but more of a social commentary. It takes a look at ideas of culture, money, and class, among other things. It's a nightmare of a cruise, but that's part of the fun. The ending, too, will stick with you. But the film takes its time getting there. It runs over 2.5 hours, and some of it drags between incredible sequences and interludes. Overall, I enjoyed the film for its originality and performances. Yaya was played by Charlby Jean, who sadly passed away in August. She does a great job in the role, as does Harris Dickinson as Carl. I also immensely enjoyed Harrelson as the captain. This is a fun and unique film, and I think it's one that's worth checking out if you can find a place where it is playing. Right now, The Triangle of Sadness is in limited release. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Finally, I'll end as I always do with my streaming pick of the week. And this time I'm going with an animated and family friendly tale in DC League of Super Pets. Animated films are always a big part of the film landscape, and DC League of Super Pets landed in theaters in July. I wasn't able to catch it when it was out in theaters, but it's now available on VOD and also available to stream for those who have an HBO Max subscription. On a recent flight, I decided to give it a look, and I'm thrilled I did. This one has a loaded voice cast led by Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart, who are a lot of fun playing off one another in the lead roles. Kate McKinnon does a great job as the main antagonist, while we get John Krasinski as Superman and Keanu Reeves as Batman, and both of them seem to be having a lot of fun as well. The story works, the comedy and the characters are well developed, and the film's a lot of fun. If you're looking for a more lighthearted superhero film or just a good animated film, DC League of Super Pets is a great option. As I mentioned, it is now streaming on HBO Max, so you can go ahead and check that one out. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Well, that's a wrap on this week's Now Showing. I hope I've given you some films to go check out and that you have a great week at the movies.